Hi, my name is Weeden. I'm a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe, and we're here today with our chief, Vernon Silent Drum Lopez, here at his beautiful home, and we're going to interview him and ask him a couple of questions here today. So, Chief, how was it growing up in Mashpee?
Well, it was pretty quiet because we owned the town at that time, back in the 30s, 20s and 30s. The population was probably only about 700 or 800 people, most all native. We lived off the land, literally, because there was no stores in those days, other than probably just a little general store where we could get some bread and sugar or something like that, but no big supermarket or anything else. So, and everyone knew everyone. It was a pretty close-knit community.
You talked about an important part about living off the land. Can you give us more detail on that?
Oh, yeah, we hunted and fished, and most everybody kind of watched out for each other, We would form parties to go out hunting. Of course, down to the bay, there was all kinds of shellfish and crabs and quahog, clams, oysters, scallops. So we had plenty of food around. It was just that you had to go out and gather it. And it was an everyday affair because, like I say, there was no stores around. So, but we lived fairly well. As far as clothing was concerned, most of our clothing was handed down as we grew out of them, and it was passed down and done over to fit the next one coming along.
Talk about going out and hunting and fishing as a group. When you guys went out and hunted as a group, as a tribe, as a network, would you consider that private land, or would you consider it community land?
No, community land. There was no trespassing signs like that around here. The land was wide open. You could go anywhere you wanted, and we just formed parties, and like I said, everyone knew each other, and they knew each other. Whatever game and stuff they got, like deer or, big game, they would cut it up and divide it. Of course, a lot of fellows went out on their own for rabbits and, and birds and stuff like that. We did a lot of duck hunting and geese and trapping, and that was our way of life.
Herring, yes. The herring runs.
The herring run?
Yes.
Yeah.
How are they?
Oh, in the old days, those herring come up in the spring. The river was black with them. You could almost walk across them, and they were a lot larger then than they were today, than they are today. And we used to cut the spawn out, and jar it or take it home, and sell it whenever we got a chance to sell it. We'd buy the quart. And there were a lot of trout in the river that came up at the same time as the herring did. The trout would swim underneath the herring, go on the bottom of the river, And we used to drop a line if we saw one. I would drop a line in underneath there and catch the trout as well as the herring. It was a good life. Hard life, but it was a good life.
Was that the river and along the river considered to be common area also?
Well, the Mashpee River, which I'm relating to mostly, was leased for 99 years, but that was only for the trout that were in the river. The herring, no one bothered us with the herring, so we could take as many of those as we wanted to. But the like I say, the river was leased, and we weren't supposed to catch any trout out of there at all, although we would sneak in there now and then after, and it was patrolled, so we would wait till whoever was patrolling would go by, and then of course as kids we'd go in there and drop a line in, especially if we knew where a good trout was hanging out.
About how old were you when you started to go hunting and fishing with the
I was about 12, 13 maybe. I got my first gun when I was about 14 years old, and it was what they call a little 410 shotgun, and it was a single shot, and I sent away to Sears Roebuck for it, and I paid $7.90 for that little 410 shotgun in those days. You had to send through the catalog to Sears Roebuck, they called it. Today they call it Sears, but in those days it was a combination of Sears and Roebuck. I guess it was like a partner company. But and that's what I used to go hunting with. And in the wintertime, when we were going deer hunting or something, you could put a slug in there. Ordinarily, for birds and stuff, you'd use a small shot, you know, so it wouldn't tear them all to pieces.
Who taught you how to hunt?
Just watching the older fellas and going with them through the woods, and you know, whenever they let us go. But you had to be real quiet because, you know, those guys wouldn't stand for anything and tramping around and yelling and screaming, you know, so we were kept quiet, and that's the way we learned, you know.
Do you remember any of the specific places that you would be brought to for hunting within Mashpee?
Oh, sure. There was a lot of places, a lot of times we would start, the older guys would start up around what we call Camp Edwards, or Oldest Air Force Base, and they had a run from there all the way down to Papaneset Bay. And some of the fellows would get up there to top, up around Otis, and in those days they used dogs too, what they call deer dogs. And they would start the deer up there, and some of the fellows would be down the other end, and the dogs would chase the deer all the way down through from Otis down to what they call through the pines, down through to Papaneset Bay. And down there, that's where they would catch the deer and shoot as many as they could find, you know. And then they would divide them up and whatever.
Shell fishing, where did you remember going to go shell fishing?
Papaneset Bay was one of our main sources of shellfish. Marquette Bay. Those are the two main places that we could get to very easily. And they were teeming with all kinds of shellfish and crabs and eels and, you know, whatever the season would bring around. So it was very good fishing and hunting. And this was one of the best areas on the Cape for hunting and fishing game. And not only that, for farming too. We had beautiful land here for farming, some of the best land for farming.
Was that common or private farmland?
Farmland? Well, some of it was private, but wherever you had a homestead, you know, you could farm on your own property. Yeah. And they grew corn and squash and beans and whatever. You know.
So were there any areas where people just planted like community gardens, or was it pretty much families did it on their own?
They did it mostly on their own. We didn't have community gardens in those days that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Most everyone had a garden in their backyard. Some of them had pretty good sized farms where they had animals, you know, cows, horses, pigs, and chickens, and, you know, the like.
We know they had roosters.
Yeah, they had plenty of roosters. Yeah, I had one here myself that used to climb on my back every time we got a chance.
Sounds like you had fun back in the day.
Well, yeah, we had fun. We had we played baseball and football, and of course we didn't have any uniforms or anything, you know. Play in the backyard, someplace, anybody's backyard, you know. We didn't have baseball. We used tennis balls if we could find them, or any kind of a ball we'd make up, you know. Just get a club or something for a bat, and same way with football. If somebody happened to have a football, we'd just play football. Sometimes we'd play touch football, you know. But we never had any uniforms or anything like that, you know, so it was just mostly all fun. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chief, for letting us visit with you and telling us about the history and living off the land. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good to sometimes sit and talk about these things and bring back the old memories, you know. And it's good for the younger generation too, I think, to kind of learn about what it was like in the old days.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.